At the start of every new year, many Pennsylvanians pause to remember one of the greatest snowstorms in the state's recorded weather history, the blizzard of 1996. It was the latest headline maker during what was a very cold, very snowy winter to date. By mid-January, ice was covering all of the rivers, and a snowpack on the order of 2 to 3 feet was covering the rest of the Commonwealth. For snow lovers, it was a spectacle. For skiers, it was stupendous. But for everyone, it was also the precursor to a huge problem. Specifically, the scenario where a record-setting snowpack, locking up 3 to 6 inches of liquid, is forced to suddenly melt in a matter of hours.
Ice on the rivers, you have a lot of snow on the ground. That's a setup for disaster if you get an influx of rain, high temps, and or humidity. And that's exactly what happened in mid to late January.
An unusually strong spring storm dumped heavy rain on Pennsylvania on January 18th and 19th as temperatures soared into the 50s and 60s. It completely wiped out the snowpack and sent the equivalent of more than a half a foot of water into the rivers almost instantly. The rapid river rises also broke up the ice. As ice sheets piled together, massive ice jams formed, which only intensified the flooding.
3+ inches of rain, which by itself isn't necessarily scary, but when you have those conditions like the ice and the snow that I mentioned before, that's very scary. I had a lot of very strong influx of those factors, which all just led to a very short-fused, rapidly developing disaster. The rivers, the big rivers, the tributaries, the smaller headwaters all responded very quickly and severely throughout almost every single basin in the Commonwealth. So the Ohio Basin, the Susquehanna Basin, the Delaware Basin, all of them were seeing this type of flooding, and flooding that easily rivaled Hurricane Agnes in 1972, that rivaled the Great Flood of 1936, and other floods from our history. The 1996 flood easily earned itself on the Mount Rushmore of Pennsylvania floods.
In total, 46 separate stream and river gauges hit major flood stage in Pennsylvania. The 1996 flood was one of the 3 worst flooding events on record for 43 locations, and for 10 of them, it is still the record holder to this day. From the Brandywine Creek at Honeybrook to the Clarion River at Wilcox, the Juniata River at Wolfsburg, and even Spring Creek at Hauserville, 2 miles down the road from the Weather World studio. The Lycoming Creek is a 37-mile-long tributary of the Susquehanna River in Tioga and Lycoming counties. This flood remains the record holder for the entire length of that creek, and the sights and sounds from that day are still vividly etched into Mike Builder's memory.
So, Wellsboro, which is in Tioga County, our county did get hit hard with the flood, and we were hearing the reports. But my mom also heard on the radio that something bad was happening down in Williamsport. So we drove down to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and they had just finished new Route 15, which is up on the ridge line. So we parked on the side of the highway and walked over to the guardrail, looked down into Lycoming Creek, and we could see the whole valley was filled with water and ice flow and ice cakes. And I even saw houses floating down Lycoming Creek down toward the Susquehanna, which was also flooding. And my mom pointed down into the valley, down at the houses, and she said, people died down there. That moment led to my deciding to pursue a career in emergency management and meteorology.
While a winter flood of this severity is not a common thing, the northeastern U.S., including Pennsylvania, is very vulnerable to the setup. It's something that emergency managers start to worry about as soon as snow ends up on the ground.
Like every time we have a big snow, again, it's like everybody thinks the show's over. And I'm like, no, and like we have to make sure that snow melts very gradually over a long period of time and not suddenly, because if it doesn't, then we could have a pretty big disaster in our hands. As I often remind folks, the the sad and traumatizing part of the Frosty the Snowman story was the part where he melted. It's interesting because the public has, perhaps you could call it a disproportionate obsession with certain types of weather and especially snowstorms, right? Like those are weather events that get a lot of attention and a lot of public attention and interest. And yet flooding, which, does is obviously sticks in people's minds and people worry about it a lot. It just doesn't seem to, for some reason, floods just don't capture the American attention as much as some of these other types of weather, even though flooding is a major component of how disasters have evolved in American history. It plays a big role in how we've developed as a nation.
Now into our fourth decade since this disaster, nothing has really come close in terms of a big-ticket winter flood.
96 is still the last big one we had. And really, 96 was the first big one we had, a winter flood we had had probably since 1936, with some small exceptions here and there. So it's still something we haven't seen since then. There's a generation, the younger meteorologists out there, the younger emergency managers out there haven't seen a winter flood like this in Pennsylvania.
As always, awareness and preparedness are key because, as the saying goes, it's only a matter of time. For Weather World, I'm Ben Reppert.